Alaska is America's last wilderness frontier, a land of monumental splendor, of unspoiled and spectacular scenery, a place where the very scale of the landscape must be seen to be believed. And the best way to see Alaska is by train. The Alaska Railroad offers us access to the once nearly inaccessible interior. It stretches 356 miles from Seward and the breathtaking fjords of Kenai Peninsula to Fairbanks beyond the slopes of majestic Mount McKinley. We will marvel at Alaska's wildlife, meet some real Alaskan characters, and journey deep into the country to Denali and Kenai National Parks. The first leg of our journey takes us south to the Kenai Peninsula, from Anchorage to Seward. All aboard as Reader's Digest presents America's Scenic Rail Journeys. The Alaska Railroad offers us an opportunity to travel the length of the Kenai Peninsula. Many people call this spine of mountains the backbone of Alaska. The peninsula contains all the scenic variety Alaska possesses. The Kenai is truly not to be missed. The southern spur of the Alaska Railroad travels to Seward, named for William Seward, Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln, who purchased Alaska from the Russians. Alaska is an unfolding spectacle of landscapes and wildlife. The animals and the land are the elements of an Alaskan adventure.
Go, Ben. Look.
I see the baby one. What kind of sheep are they?
These doll sheep, cousins to the Rocky Mountain bighorn, are capable of living on near vertical slopes.
Doll sheep.
The train passes along the shore of Turnagain Arm, named in 1778 by the British explorer Captain James Cook, whose ships had to turn again and again to avoid the treacherous mudflats. Captain Cook's logs tell us of his voyages from Hawaii to the Bering Sea in search of a Northwest Passage. What these men discovered, of course, was coastal Alaska. As the train runs close to the water, we can see high tide rolling in. Turnagain has the world's second highest tidal range. It can rise 30 feet from low to high tide.
Tickets, please.
Conductor Harry Ross. Harry knows the route well. He's worked on the railroad most of his adult life.
It's a beautiful place. People don't really realize what they're missing by not coming to visit. We see quite a bit of wildlife. We see bear. Around springtime, we see a lot of foxes and wolverines and wolves. And this time of year, during the summer, during the tourist season, we see a heck of a lot of moose out there. And we put these tour guides on our trains, and they learn the different scenery parts along the way, and then they relay all that information to the passengers and answer questions that are asked them, and it's just a wonderful program.
Yeah, it's nothing more beautiful than the scenery up here in Alaska. So, you know, we see something different every day, and it's just beautiful.
The Alaska Railroad travels through Chugach State Park, which dominates the upper Kenai Peninsula. Besides its beauty, the Chugach offers an insight into the Alaskan character. Living in the wilderness builds appreciation for the land. Living in the wilderness inspired Art Davidson to become a conservationist.
For me, it was this feeling of just belonging to the land and the country. And the longer I stayed, like a lot of my friends, there's something that just grabs a hold of you. Part of it's the seasons, part of it's the land, part of it's just being able to get out in the country. Being in this beautiful grove of trees reminds me, a few years ago, I read in the morning paper that they were going to cut all the trees down in this little valley south of Anchorage. So I called a few friends and we raised a little protest, you know. There weren't any conservation organizations and there weren't any state parks or anything, but we just felt that these special places had to be saved, you know, so that kids could always go out and hike and families could go out, and we have these beautiful mountains near Anchorage. And we took it to the legislature, and kind of to our surprise, they created a state park, and it turned out to be the largest one in the country.
Chugach Park now covers 500,000 square acres of the stunning landscape below Anchorage. It is the largest state park in the nation. The Chugach has become a national treasure, but we might never have known it without the railroad. Alaskans were once a scattered and isolated people. The railroad brought them together. It made it possible to move about this vast wilderness and to save that wilderness when it needed saving. Next on the route is Girdwood, on the slope of Mount Alyeska. Girdwood was once a thriving mining area amidst the captivating scenery. The village of Crow Creek has been preserved as an example of this era of gold mining in the valley. You'd never know by this pleasant village how hard gold mining truly was. It's been said by the old-timers that there are few endeavors on earth which man is less prepared for than the hardships of gold mining. The train passes waterfalls fed by snowmelt from the Kenai Mountains above us. A tunnel, and when we emerge, the mountains are close around us as we enter the heart of the Grandview Valley.
Right now we are going through the Grandview Valley and
Wildlife is everywhere along the route. Beaver ponds stretch along the trackside. These intrepid creatures build elaborate dams, cutting down trees with their chisel-like teeth. The beaver is unmistakable with his broad, flat, paddle-like tail. This spectacular landscape was shaped by massive glaciers. In summer, greenery frames the huge ice rivers that are formed when the yearly snowpack exceeds the summer melt. Almost 100 feet of snow can fall in the mountains per year. Glaciers, some of them hundreds of feet deep, can grind forward at the rate of 70 feet or more in 12 months, and an impressive 6 miles per century. Little Moose Pass is nestled in the middle of glacier country, where moose and fish greatly outnumber the human inhabitants. Not surprisingly, there are many opportunities for excellent sport fishing.
Nice. Nice color.
These impressive salmon weigh over 30 pounds.
Okay. 32.
And of course, the salmon barbecue can be most enticing.
Very good.
The scenery and fishing adventures of glacier country can best be reached by train. Between Moose Pass and Seward are found the deep waters and jagged cliffs of the Kenai Fjords National Park. These icebergs are actually floating in the bay. They're formed when the leading edge of a glacier calves off in large chunks and tumbles into the sea. These are the icy ledges of Exit Glacier in Kenai Fjords. The train makes an unannounced stop. Like a lot of Alaska trains, it stops on demand to deposit adventurers in the wilderness.
I wonder if this train runs
This family plans to visit a glacier.
in the wintertime. I think it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. I wonder if there's a lake at the base of that.
There he goes.
Today, the train stops near Exit Glacier. Experienced backcountry travelers, the Corral family have explored some of Alaska's most remote wildernesses.
Okay, we got everybody.
We'll walk with them along the edge of a massive ice field that stretches for miles. The Corral family experiences the awe-inspiring and sometimes unsettling sensation of a close-up encounter with the glacier.
Do you notice how the temperature kind of drops right here? It's a little cooler right beside the glacier. Can
Yeah.
you feel it?
Yeah, there's a lot of temperature changes right here.
Yeah.
Ice cracked. It gets smushed.
We heard it crack earlier. See, this is the one that we heard earlier that fell off, I think.
Getting
What?
cooled off.
The ice
real
caves
quick.
under there. That's pretty dangerous. They don't want people to climb under there.
There may be some lessons here that go beyond the natural history of glaciers.
I hope that, you know, after our kids grow up, wherever they go, whatever they do in life, they'll be able to look back and realize that, you know, they have a strong sense of who they are, and that foundation was built both at home and in the wild, where we spend so much of our time. Stay with Mom. You can lead. Let's see. You can walk right up on that hill.
The idea of Alaska building character is not a new one,
Okay.
and there are lots of Alaska characters to prove it. But you have to travel to meet them. Again, the train serves us well. South of Exit Glacier, we rendezvous with a float plane and meet a true Alaskan character, World War II aviator and Alaska's bushrat governor, Jay Hammond.
When I first came up here, it was a land of untrammeled wilderness. There were 70,000 people in the state, 32,000 in Anchorage. I thought it was a little crowded, but not too bad. Now, with 600,000, it seems teeming. But back then, if you wanted to become a bush pilot, you became a bush pilot. You wanted to be a commercial fisherman, you took up commercial fishing. If you wanted to be a guide, you could work toward that. Now, while those doors aren't completely closed, they're much more difficult to enter. The beauty of the mountains and the lakes and the vast expanses themselves, unique species of game, unique species of fish, and I think Alaskan people are a unique breed unto themselves. Being Alaskan is in the eye of the beholder. Some would think it was a rugged individualist that lived off the land, quote unquote, and yet living off the land gets tedious after a while. That land don't taste so good, according to one old-timer friend of mine. So while they have a romanticized vision of themselves as being hardy Alaskans, most of us are not. We live in a rather civilized manner, and while we like to have folk from elsewhere think that we're in a unique breed, we're really pretty much like everybody else. Here in Alaska, you can live your own lifestyle without feeling you have to conform. I think this inclines folks to reach for stars they otherwise might never have even observed.
The train arrives at the city of Seward. Historian and local resident Lee Pileski conducts walking tours of this historic town.
One thing I like about Seward is they leave you alone if you want to be left alone. If you want to join in, they welcome you in. You can pretty well lead the life you want to lead. I came here in August of 1964, see what it was like, and enjoyed the town, liked the town. And one year went into another and another and another. Just kept staying. It's going to be 32 years now in August.
Making a life in Seward makes you part of a pioneering history. Founded in 1903 on ice-free Resurrection Bay, Seward soon became the principal Alaskan port and railroad hub.
Seward was literally the gateway to Alaska. If you came to Alaska in the 20s and the 30s, you came to Seward. You came by boat, the boats docked at Seward, and you took the railroad north.
In a period of phenomenal engineering feats, such as the Brooklyn Bridge and the Suez Canal, the Alaska Railroad posed engineering problems which bankrupted two companies. Finally, the federal government stepped in and completed the railroad.
The Alaska Railroad was started in 1915 and completed in 1923. And President Harding came to Alaska to drive the Golden Spike, symbolizing the completion of the construction. And he landed here in Seward. And the mayor at that time felt that this would probably be the only time the children in the town would ever see a president. And so they had a special reception where the president met every kid in town. There was a little glitch in the schedule, and they had a whole extra day. And so the mayor, who at that time was L.B. Ray, approached the president and said, what would you like us to do? Would you like a banquet? Would you like a parade? What would you like? And President Harding said, I would just like a day of peace. If you could just, let me walk around, enjoy the city. And so the mayor that night sent word out, there was about 400 people in town that time, not to bother the president the next day. If he talked to you, talk to him, but don't come up and talk about territorial politics or anything, or national politics. Just sort of leave the guy alone. And so the next day, the president, all by himself, walked around town, walked up to Main Street, went into the barber shop, got a haircut, went into a hardware store, talked to people, talked to kids, leaned on the fence, talked to some people doing their gardening, and in general just had a nice, pleasant day talking to the people of Seward.
Our train adventure has also brought us close to Kenai Fjords National Park, its glaciers and deep water bays. On the water, the National Park Service offers train passengers a tour of the fjords.
My name is Ricky Geese. I'm the park ranger. Will be on board today providing the interpretation. The Alaska flag was designed here in Seward, and it shows how to find north. It's the North Star and the Big Dipper. And the two stars of the Big Dipper point to the North Star. And the personality of Alaska in this lands of extremes is you have to know where you are outside, and always be aware of the conditions. And living in that environment, it gives people a sense of who they are. And when you meet Alaskans, you definitely know where they stand. They'll tell you up front that if a person extends a hand out in a warm handshake, it means that they're happy to see you.
Fjord is the Norwegian word for a deep water bay carved out of the land over the centuries by a glacier, where it meets the sea. The ice of the glacier splits along fissures and hurtles into the sea. As the glacier breaks up, it recedes, and ocean water advances into the fjord. At Resurrection Bay, the fjord is 1,000 feet deep. Our boat captain carefully steers us close to the face of the glacier to watch the huge ice sheet as it collapses into the sea. We are shrouded in mist and surrounded by floating ice, a cold, wet, but also thrilling encounter with nature at its raw-boned best. From the ship, we can see a pod of killer whales. Sharp-toothed whales like these travel in packs, and they hunt like wolves in a cooperative, intelligent way. In this land of extremes, there is no limit to the willfulness of nature, and there are times when we cannot escape it. In 1964, the most extreme seismic event in North American history struck Seward, an earthquake measuring 9.2. Tidal waves swept over the land.
Gerald, I presume you can hear me. Is there any indication or sign of fire at Seward?
We've received this report through the city manager here in Anchorage that both the oil tanks and docks are on fire at Seward.
When the fires burned themselves out, they left a scene of utter devastation. Part of the old port and its rail yard are now submerged under a modern marina. But hope and life, not just devastation, are part of the history of Seward's Resurrection Bay. For the celebrated American artist Rockwell Kent, who lived here on Fox Island in the latter part of 1918, Resurrection Bay was true to its name. He painted images that give life to human hope and dreams. His journal captures the inspiration he took from the land. Alaska is a fairyland in the magic beauty of its mountains and waters. The virgin freshness of this wilderness and its utter isolation are a constant source of inspiration. Remote and free from contact with man, our life is simplicity itself. We work hard with back and hands, felling great trees. We row across 13 miles of treacherous water to the nearest town. And the days and nights, weeks and months alone with my son, during which I have learned to see the wonder of his world and know his heart, such things to me are the glory of Alaska. Every day and almost all day I painted in frantic haste to catch a portion of the passing glory. Express myself? What sacrilege! Who talks when God is speaking? The artist's eloquence makes a fitting end to our rail adventure. Alaska has been called a land of extremes, and we have seen them all on our journey from Anchorage to Seward. From spectacular mountain glaciers to deep water fjords. From abundant wildlife to bays and islands and mountain forests. From earthquakes to an artist's vision of an inspiring land. But there's even more adventure in Alaska's backcountry, and once again the Alaska Railroad will take us there. Our next journey is north, from Anchorage to Fairbanks. The Alaska Railroad offers travelers a unique way to traverse the state's spectacular backcountry. Summer is the height of the travel season. The Alaska Railroad offers a train to a most popular destination, Denali Park, which is on our route to Fairbanks. The journey begins in Anchorage. The 356-mile trip north to Fairbanks in central Alaska will take 12 hours traveling through verdant landscapes. Alaska is a land of superlatives, with 17 of the tallest peaks in the nation, 10 major rivers, and 3 million lakes. Its natural beauty is hard to surpass. Within minutes of leaving the Anchorage station, civilization seems to disappear. In the past, travelers journeyed to the interior by river. With the building of the railroad, Alaska was forever changed. Now much of Alaska's stunning terrain is ours to visit along this scenic railway. At the end of the last century, the pioneering spirit inspired the hardy prospector and the settler alike to venture here. It was the allure of gold, and for some, what Jack London termed the call of the wild, which brought thousands to this land. Today, it's the country's stunning beauty which draws hundreds of thousands.
We're riding up to Denali to ride our tandem bicycle back down to Eagle River. Quite a bit of it will be downhill with a slight grade, and that'll help some. On a bicycle, you see more than normally you would in a car. So oftentimes small animals like fox or lynx and porcupine and
bear. I don't anticipate seeing any, but I don't look forward to it if we should. I just don't care about them.
The first major stop for the train will be Talkeetna. Talkeetna is the gateway to Mount McKinley. It's also a jumping-off point for train travelers who would like a taste of an Alaskan wild river.
Right,
Margaret Salmon runs an ecotourism business in Talkeetna.
I got to Talkeetna actually via a friend of mine, Jerry Souza, who was a spotter pilot for herring in Prince William Sound. Jerry had always guided up here ever since he was a little kid. Now we can have our own little business here in Talkeetna, rafting and sport fishing.
It's a good feeling to be able to show people what Alaska has to offer here in a really non-intrusive way.
Rafting, kayaking, and sport fishing are just a few adventures Talkeetna has to offer, and it's worth the side trip.
All right. Woo! Okay, big one. The active eagle's nest, but the water.
The major draw of this rustic Alaskan frontier village is the proximity to Mount McKinley, and it's used as a staging area for the serious mountaineer. The Fairbanks train continues north toward Denali, but the railroad offers another choice at Talkeetna. For natives and hardy visitors, the Alaska Railroad offers its one-of-a-kind flag train between Talkeetna and Hurricane Gulch. The flag train has no fixed schedule. It makes stops only on demand to pick up or drop off someone in the wilderness. Residents rely on the flag train for supplies, mail, and medical emergencies. Visitors take the flag train for a little adventure.
Where you going? 255. 255? Okay, I gotta take two of them, that's so.
Okay.
One way.
And I'm coming out today too, so.
Okay, 255.
Get you to honk the horn.
All right.
You can stand next to the rail and flag the train down and stop it, and I believe it's one of the last flag stop trains available in the United States. It helps these people get out to their cabins or their homesteads. Everything north of Talkeetna all the way up to Hurricane, there's no roads. So this is the only way for them to get in there.
Even anglers rely on the flag train. It provides the only access to many promising trout streams.
Oh, here's our stop.
All right.
Thank you.
Beautiful looking water, absolutely gorgeous. Right in here there's a good bend, and then if you go up and around there's a good bend over there, and then if you go down this way on the other side of the bridge there's a good spot.
Okay, great.
So you know what you're doing, you'll find them.
Thank you.
All right, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, be careful.
100 years ago, travelers came by mule to stake claim to the wilderness and settle a plot of government land. It was called homesteading and goes on today. While homesteading an abandoned cabin, Mary Shields relied on the flag train for her lifeline. In 1974, Mary became the first woman to complete the grueling 1,000-mile sled dog race called the Iditarod.
Hey guys, you want to go? Some friends came down from Fairbanks and they suggested a few sled dogs would help with the chores, be good company for me, and it just so happened they had 3 old sled dogs at home. Very next southbound train, the engineer blew the whistle, the train stopped out in the middle of nowhere, and out came these 3 big fluffy dogs, a pile of dog food, an old sled, harnesses, and they had a little note taped on the sled that said, "Dear Mary, there's nothing to it, just put the dogs in front of the sled." When I heard of a 1,000-mile race where they broke out the trail for us, I thought this is a great way to see Alaska. So I just called up and signed up. They said, "Who are you?" And you needed 8 dogs to start the race. I only had 6 dogs, so I had to buy 2 more dogs to meet the minimum requirement to start the race. When I got to Nome, it was pretty exciting. I pulled in about 3:30 thinking no one would be wide awake, but they turned the fire siren on. That's the way they alert the community that a team's coming in. They do it for the first team, they do it for the last team, they do it for everyone that mushes 1,000 miles. Right under the finish line there was a group of women waiting, short Eskimo women, great big tall women, parkas, mucklucks, and they had a banner stretched out over their heads that said, "You've come a long way, baby."
We leave the flag train behind and rejoin the Fairbanks train at Talkeetna as it continues toward Denali and Mount McKinley. If the adventurous sightseer wants a closer look at Mount McKinley, he can do so by air. Our pilot on this adventure is pilot Buck Woods.
I've been flying the Alaska bush for about 15 years now. The view changes every day, the mountain changes every day. I don't think there's any such thing as
the mountains can be a truly inspirational sight, cloaked in fog and brushed by hurricane winds.
Here and see if we can get through this pass. Looks like we can. Okay, we're coming into little Switzerland here.
The mountain reminds us of the tremendous scale nature is capable of achieving. Visitors who journey here by train will tell you that Alaska is big. These are some of the biggest mountains in the world.
Also, it is known as the coldest mountain on Earth, day for day.
The most experienced climbers spend a lifetime preparing to challenge McKinley. The treacherous mountain can be a terrifying adversary.
This is the north face of Hunter here. There's climbing routes on that.
Sheer, ice-covered ridges from the south face, which provides climbing routes to the peak above.
This is the northeast fork. In climbing circles, it's known as
We're flying over the area climbers call Death Valley. One must tread lightly here or risk avalanches from either ridge.
Orient Express is the most direct line down from the summit to the 14,000 foot level. That's why it's so seductive to a tired climber, is you're standing up there by the summit and you can see the 14,000 foot camp and it looks like, oh hell, I'll just go down that thing and take a
Our destination is Kahiltna Glacier at a dizzying altitude of 7,500 feet.
Okay, we'll take an orbit around base camp and we'll land there.
The ascent of McKinley is prepared for at base camp. And from here, the occasional rescue is made. Annie Duquette runs the base camp.
We've got about 6 climbers that need to go out. Well, I get to meet people from all over the world. It's really interesting. The most common problem that a lot of climbers encounter is the altitude. A lot of climbers don't realize that they need to take time at higher altitudes to acclimatize, and a lot of times they rush up to the summit and come down with either cerebral or pulmonary edema. And that's the problem that we find most often up here. This year, though, we did have an awful lot of frostbite due to the high winds. As far as being lonely, no, I'm never lonely up here. I always have climbers in camp. A lot of the same climbers come back every year, working with the taxi services, working with the park service. It's like a big family up here, and we work as a team, and that's real important, and that's what I like about it.
Like the airplane against the backdrop of the icy mountain, we feel smaller in Alaska, diminished by the sheer size of the landscape. Those who choose this side trip from the train will never forget it. Back aboard the comfortable train, we travel north, over so-called Hurricane Gulch, one of the many fearsome engineering challenges for the builders of the Alaska Railroad. Hurricane Bridge was completed in 1921 and spans the astonishing 918-foot wide gorge. The creek, 296 feet down. The experience of the wilderness sometimes arouses unsuspected talents in the frequent traveler.
I started riding the Alaska Railroad when I was 9 years old. I'd save my pennies, I'd get on a train, ride to the park, buy a milkshake, and that was how I spent the afternoon, and catch the night train back home again.
Brakeman Warren Redford.
I started photography in high school, just as something to do, and I kind of liked it. And I got the picture of the Dahl sheep ram that's in the book, and everybody wanted to buy it from me. I hired out of high school, turned some money to go to college, and I forgot to go to college.
And you took these yourself?
I took these myself, yes ma'am. The glacier here is Columbia Glacier in Prince William Sound, College Fjord. And a lot of my really great photos have been taken 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, because we do have the 19 hours of daylight. I was only about 10 feet from it when I took that picture. My favorite part of working on the railroad is sharing Alaska that I love with the people that ride on my trains, trying to show them the moose, the bear, McKinley. You'd think I get tired of it after as many trips I've gone through. It's every time I see the mountain, I get a thrill because the passengers are getting a thrill seeing this, and it's an awesome sight.
Our next stop, the incomparable Denali. Many will tell you Denali National Park is the most spiritual and scenic place in all of interior Alaska, and our train takes us right there. The park is crowned by Mount McKinley, which the native peoples call Denali. 500,000 people a year visit the park by train. Denali hosts trails for hikers and bikers, attracts botanists and bird watchers by the score. Just a short distance from the train station, visitors can begin to enjoy the park's marvelous scenic beauty. But to enter the high Arctic environment, we must travel by bus. You can pet these dogs, but they have work to perform. They are National Park Service employees.
As long as 12,000 years ago, maybe even more, native people have been using dogs.
A fine introduction to the park is the sled dog demonstration with Ranger Jennifer.
And I play with them too. I do recreational mushing and really enjoy their company as companion pets as well.
Eskimo communities once relied exclusively on the sled dog for their survival. We continue our side trip on the Denali Park bus. Within the park's boundaries reside an amazing 132 kinds of birds and a variety of mammals, including the red fox we see along the road.
Winter coat. That's why it looks so ratty. In another month and a half, that fox will be beautiful.
For 90 miles, we pass through Arctic tundra. A Russian word, tundra is composed of a boggy vegetation, which forms a flat expanse like a living carpet. Tundra has no trees. This Dahl sheep makes its home here. In 1917, the government set aside land, including Mount McKinley, as a national park. In 1980, when 100 million acres were declared protected wilderness in Alaska, an area larger than the state of Massachusetts was added to the park. The whole region was renamed Denali, an Athabascan word meaning the Great One. To the Indians, the mountain is sacred.
She's so big.
Yep, there's a cub. We're right
The site most cherished by travelers venturing into the park's interior is the mighty grizzly bear.
about 5 feet.
In Alaska, the grizzly is big. Arctic mammals are generally bigger than their southern cousins. The giant Alaskan grizzly can weigh in excess of 1,200 pounds and stand almost 8 feet tall. We arrive at the welcome site of Camp Denali Lodge.
Hi, I'm Nan.
Hi. Lindsay.
What is it, Lindsay? Oh, great, Lindsay. Welcome to Camp Denali.
Thank you.
Great to see you here.
One may canoe, hike, or merely relax at Camp Denali. Our hosts, Jerry and Wally Cole.
We exist here in Denali National Park is to give the more adventurous of the folks who travel here these days an alternative to what is the norm in terms of accommodations and experience.
Doll sheep, ptarmigan, magpie, and golden eagles live near the camp. The camp sits on Wonder Lake. The lake is over 2 miles long and stretches to the very foot of Mount Denali.
Okay, we're going up the Camp's Ridge, which is a 1,500-foot vertical rise.
We also have guides who are going out with guests each day. Usually we divide guests into small groups of not more than, say, 10 or 12 people and help them experience Denali either in a very strenuous hiking fashion or nothing more than a half-day nature walk. Camp Denali was started by Morton and Virginia Wood and their friend Celia Hunter. That was back in 1951.
We thought it'd be neat to spend summers out there, and because and we expected that we would probably have guests who like to hike, and we would go with them.
The fact that we wanted to have people get out and hike in the park, watch the wildlife, you know.
And do the things we like to do. And our whole thing was that we figured what the entertainment was out there. We didn't want any artificial stuff.
The original owners of the camp came by air. They were veteran military pilots.
How did we get to Alaska? In 2 beat-up old Army surplus airplanes, which we were hired to deliver to Fairbanks.
They had had women pilots up here in Alaska before we ever got up here, but they were fairly rare.
Yeah.
Fairly rare birds.
Current owner Wally Cole wanted to buy the lodge from the Wood sisters in 1959.
Wally was a kid when we first knew him. He was rustling baggage back at the hotel.
One rainy night here in the lodge, having gotten in at around 11 o'clock, very stormy, rainy, awoke the next morning to this incredible panorama of McKinley and the rest of the Alaska Range in full view through these front windows. And he was hooked.
And then we tried to figure out for several years how he could buy it.
The lawyer said, well, now what about the down payment? And we said, well, we hadn't planned on having a down payment because we didn't want to have Wally spend the money on a down payment that he could spend operating. Well, he said, you really have to have something. And so we said, well, we would like to have a couple of rocking chairs for our old age. And so that was the agreement.
Wally did this in his spare time. That was his hobby of doing something, so that's why we got those. We don't no longer own any part of Camp Denali, but our hearts are still there.
So, for a pair of homemade wooden rockers, a lodge changed hands in the Alaskan wilderness. Back on the train, the final leg of our adventure north passes through the Tanana River Valley. The railroad's builders encountered a great many obstacles between Denali and Fairbanks. Canyons where the soil was unstable required elaborate trestles. Mountains had to be tunneled through, and rivers required spanning. In July of 1923, President Warren G. Harding drove the Golden Spike here at the west end of Mears Memorial Bridge, marking completion of the railroad. Gold built more than one town in Alaska, and it was especially true at Fairbanks, now the state's second largest city. Fairbanks was founded by starry-eyed adventurers that had come to seek their fortunes. In 1902, hordes of prospectors called stampeders poured into the Fairbanks region and set up operations. Today, while commercial mines continue to dig gold, we are offered a reenactment of what prospecting was like at the turn of the century. Visitors can still pan for a little color in search of gold. With patience, you may find some.
The best part about the gold in these pans right now, folks, brand new money, right out of a hole in the ground.
Although the prospectors seldom struck it rich, adventurous merchants recognized a golden opportunity and set up shop in the mining camps, supplying all the necessities. One such family of entrepreneurs was the Binkley family, who supplied miners along the Yukon River a century ago. The Binkleys still own shallow draft paddle wheelers. At 265 feet, this one can float in just 3 feet of water.
Our family started in the gold rush days. My grandfather came up here in 1898, and instead of gold mining, he built stern wheel riverboats and supplied the gold miners.
We're going to have a historic photographic opportunity here, folks.
With so few roads, travel in Alaska has always been a struggle. Early travelers came by riverboat, but only a few rivers were passable, and travel was limited by winter ice. The railroad offers a partial solution.
I had spent a number of years up and down the Yukon River serving the needs of Indian, Eskimo, and Caucasian people for literally dozens of hundreds of miles. And when Mrs. Binkley and I started this, she had an awareness of the cultures of the interior and had studied it, as a matter of fact. And she felt that people would be interested in this remarkable native culture found here in the shadow of the Arctic Circle.
Some part of the Athabascan way of life has been preserved in live demonstrations. The old culture has nearly vanished elsewhere. There are 3 Aboriginal peoples in Alaska: the Aleut, who are an island people, the Eskimos, who live on the coast, and the Athabascan Indians, who live in the backcountry of interior Alaska. The beading on the tribal jackets depicts bluebells and forget-me-nots, which grow during the brief Alaskan summer.
Something special, so you may want to get your cameras ready. This is called the Sunshine Rub.
Mrs. Binkley and I have 4 children, a daughter and 3 sons. And they started just as little kids, doing their chores on the boats.
We only had 1 trip a day, and our season was much less with our little 25-passenger vessel. So as the business grew, the children were growing.
And then as they grew older, they took more responsibilities. Then as they had families, each of their kids, our grandchildren, did the same thing coming into the business. So that now of the 20 family members, we have 18 working in the business. The other 2 are not renegades, they're just under 5 years old.
Started out as a youngster going along on the boat with my folks, and I stood right on this box and learned to drive as a child, to operate the boat. And myself, like my brothers, my 2 brothers and I have all become riverboat captains.
Our visitors, when they leave, to love Alaska as much as we love it, but I don't know if that's possible.
It once took months and great hardship to make the journey to Fairbanks. It also took an adventurous spirit. Alaska still inspires adventure, and there's no better way to find it than on the railroad. Klondike poet Robert Service perhaps expressed it best. There's a land where the mountains are nameless, and the rivers all run God knows where. There are lives that are airy and aimless, and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons. There are valleys unpeopled and still. There's a land oh, it beckons and beckons, and I want to go back, and I will. You don't really have a sense of wilderness until you see Alaska. Perhaps the largest, still untouched wilderness on Earth, and we were able to see it on the Alaska Railroad. It's one of America's most awe-inspiring scenic rail journeys. Thanks for riding with us.